Shabbat Shalom, Baruch Hashem, Yahweh. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. This morning our subject is titled, Go Call Your Husband. Go call your husband. In reference to the conversation that Yeshua had with the Samaritan woman at the well. At the time that Yeshua spoke morality to the people on Mount Sinai, there was no variableness, nor shadow of turning in his voice. His laws are the standards of his judgment for all men and in all ages. This morning we want to look at marriage, the institution of marriage. There were two institutions that were made in paradise: marriage and indeed the seventh-day Sabbath. These are the pillars that hold up the society. And as we watch the unfolding episodes of life, we see that these pillars are being trodden underfoot. And so this morning we want to go into Yah's word and to examine ourselves through the written word. As a family counselor and a victim advocate, I am fully aware that in the society in which we live, 50% of all marriages will end in a divorce. And it's no different in the churches. It's between 40 and 50%. And so that ought to bring home to us in a profound way that something is wrong. Some people are in marriage and they are toppled by their own solipsism. They are hoodwinked by the notion that everything must revolve around them. And so they end up into a punitive marriage in the sense that they cause pain and anxiety and frustration to the ones that they live with. So they end up in this punitive marriage. But this morning I'd like to make a distinction between the punitive marriage and the putative marriage. That is, those who are in good faith believing that they're married, but in the records of Yah, they're not married at all. That's the putative marriages. So come with me to the book of Yohanan, as was read earlier. That's the book of John. The word tells us that Yeshua went to the well and he sat there, and then a woman from Samaria came to fetch water. Let's read it. When therefore the master knew how the Pharisees had heard that Yeshua made and baptized more disciples than Yohanan, though Yeshua himself baptized not, but his Talmudim, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee, and he must needs to go through Samaria. He had a need. It's almost as if it's a duty. I have to go there. So the word implies Yeshua had to go to Samaria. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Understand what's happening here. Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and they inherited their father's estate. So this Sychar, this place where Yeshua sat with this woman at the well, belonged to two North African boys. Even as we watch bombs are raining down in the Middle East, we need to take stock of this situation. The word says that he had a need to go to Samaria. There cometh, verse 7 tells us, a woman of Samaria to draw water. Yeshua said unto her, give me a drink. Give me a drink. He speaks to us here in the subjunctive mood. He asks a question. Give me a drink of water. For his disciples were gone away into the city to buy meat. Meat here is not flesh. Meat is just food. We've got to understand that. Then said the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou, being a Yehudi, a Jew, is asking me to give you a drink? And Yeshua said to her, if you knew who it is who asked you for a drink, you would have asked him, you would have asked me to give you a drink. I would give you living water, not just ordinary water. And so he had something to give her, but he was engaging her in this conversation. The request that Yeshua made caused the woman of Samaria to rummage through the recesses of her own conscience. It exposed her to the scenes in her own life, past and present, that she would rather forget than to remember. Go and call your husband. In her own mind, she's thinking, I've had 5 husbands, and the person that I'm living with now, my paramour, is not my husband. So how do I respond to his request to call my husband? She's thinking of that. But at this time, her tonality changed. She had earlier said, how is it that you, being a Jew, is asking me for water? And now she's in this pensive, euphonious, and even reverent tone. Sir, give me that water. It was as if Yeshua at this particular time was strumming her thoughts with his eyes while drumming her conscience with his words. He was winning her softly with his word, willing her kindly. He was telling her whole life with his word, winning her softly. She had a story to tell, and she had a style. Thereby, he came to see her and talk with her for a while. And there this Samaritan woman was no stranger to his eyes. The word says, and he must have needs to go to Samaria. So he was just strumming her conscience with his word and winning her softly with his words. When a man gets married, he makes a vow. He makes a vow not only with his wife, but in front of Yah. It's a 3-way relationship. It's a covenant relationship. We need to understand that marriage is Yah's plan for the human family. But too often, the churches and the secular society are reading their own press releases and believing that they can treat marriage as if it's a disposable napkin. When we read the book of Numbers, chapter 30 and verse 2, the word says, if a man vow a vow unto Yah, or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word, he shall do according to all that proceeded out of his mouth. When you make a vow in marriage, you must honor that. That's the expectation of Yah. In Deuteronomy, that's Devarim, chapter 23, reading from verse 21 and 22, he says, when thou shalt vow, as thou shalt not slack to pay it, for Yahweh thy Elohim will surely require it of thee, and it would be a sin in thee. But if thou shalt forbear to vow, it shall be no sin in thee. When you vow, when you make a marriage, when you say, I take this woman, this man, to be my life's partner, and only the sleep of death can separate us, Yah expects you to see that through. He expects you to see that through. And so this morning, we need to understand that it is one law that shall be for the homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth with you, according to Exodus 12 and verse 49. And again he writes, you shall have one manner of law, as well for the stranger as for your own country, for I am Yahweh your Elohim, Leviticus 24 and verse 22. Numbers 15 and verse 16. One law and one manner shall be for you and for the stranger that sojourneth with you. So if we understand that, we cannot say, well, we are Baptists and therefore we practice the law differently. Or we are Pentecostal and we believe differently. We are Episcopalian. We are Seventh-day Adventists. We are Catholic and we believe differently. One law for the unborn and one law, the same law for the stranger. But the culture sees nothing wrong in being extravagant as it moves recklessly towards blithe and profligate behaviors. It's a sad indictment on what the society has become. It seems that outrageousness has no greater heights to reach in the society that is immune to shame and disgrace. It's peaked, so it seems, because people are just treating their marriages as if it's a disposable napkin. And we're told that in certain states, it's a no-fault state. You can divorce your life's partner as easy as a lawyer or a judge will make it. The word says, the word of Yah says, he who puts them together, no man should separate, no lawyer, no judge. And so we need to understand that situation. And I'm going to ask you to come with me to Jeremiah chapter 2. Jeremiah chapter 2. The word of Jeremiah says, moreover, the word of Yah came to me, saying, go and cry in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, thus saith Yahweh, I remember thee, the kindness of thy youth, the love of thine espousal, when thou wentest after me in the wilderness, in a land that was not sown. Israel was holiness unto Yahweh, and the first fruit of his increase. All that devour him shall offend, evil some up, that come upon them, said Yahweh. Israel was Kodash. It was a holy nation unto Yah, and first fruit of his increase. All that devour him, all that trouble Israel offended Yah, and evil came upon them. It's like two young lovers in the initial part of courtship, how they pay respect to each other and they listen to each other. And they don't butt into the conversation until the one is finished speaking. They show love demonstrated in such a way that it is good to see. That's what Yah is saying. But Yah is wondering, how could Israel, who was so loving to me in these early days, has now gone astray? How? He's saying in verse 22, return ye backsliding children, and I will heal your backsliding. Behold, we come unto thee, for thou art Yahweh, our Elohim. I'm reading here from chapter 3, verses 22. That precedes chapter 4. So, Yah, in verse 31, I'm going back to Jeremiah chapter 2, he says, O generation, see ye the word of Yahweh, have I been a wilderness unto Israel, a land of darkness? Wherefore say my people, we are restless, we will come no more unto thee. Verse 32, can a maid forget her ornaments, or a bride her attire? Yet my people have forgotten me days without number. Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? Therefore, hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways. Also in thy skirts is found the blood of the souls of the poor innocents. I have not found it by secret search, but upon all these. Can a bride forget her attire? Can she? Can she forget her ornaments for her wedding day? The question is being asked. But Yah said, my people, they have done that. And so I want you to come with me to the book of Proverbs, chapter 1, because people reading this, they might well conclude, see, there it is. It is okay to wear these ornaments. It is okay to wear my earrings, and here it is in the word. But notice something here before we read Proverbs. Yah is speaking to us by way of similitude. Because in Hosea 12 and verse 10, it says, I have also spoken by the prophet. He's speaking here to Jeremiah, the prophet, by way of similitude. And I have multiplied visions and used similitude by the ministry of the prophet. So I want you to understand that before we read Proverbs. Proverbs 1, verse 6. To understand the Proverbs, to understand the similitude by which Yah spoke here in Jeremiah, and the interpretation, the words of the wise, and their dark saying, the fear of Yah is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. Who? Fools despise wisdom and instruction. My son, hear the instructions of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. Forsake not the Torah of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains around thy neck. Did you get that? The ornament that is spoken of in Jeremiah, he said it's the Torah that you wear around your neck, not the living, the ornaments, not the hearing. Let's read it again for emphasis. It says, my son, hear the instructions of thy father. Forsake not the law, forsake not the Torah of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thine head, and chains around thy neck. So you wear the Torah around your neck, not your chains. Because he's speaking to us in similitude, analogy. That's how he speaks to us. So we need to understand that situation. And so incessant calls have been made to succeed in generation, to live righteously as Yahweh intended man to live after the morning, the great promises in Eden. Man had been plagued by intermittent backsliding. He often acts on the glow of impulse rather than on divine utterances. And so we need to understand that when the woman came to the well, and Yah says, go call your husband, she was struck because you know what her past had been like. And so this morning we want to take a look at marriage, because Yeshua says, you have heard it said. You have heard it said that, let's turn with me to Matthew 5:33. Again, we have heard that it has been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shall perform unto the master thine oath. You've heard it said. When you get married, you must honor. You must honor your vows. It's not always easy, but it's Yah's expectation, because in Bereshit 2 and verse 24, he says, for this cause must a man leave his mother and father and be cleaved to his wife. And the husband must love his wife even as Yeshua loves the assembly. He says that. And in verse 31 to 33 of chapter 5 in Matthew, he said, it hath been said, whoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But I say unto you that whosoever shall put away his wife, saying for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery. And whosoever shall marry her that is divorced, commit adultery. Again, ye have heard that it has been said by them of old, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto Yahweh. And so many have used this as the exception clause. They say you can divorce if your wife has committed fornication. And my question is, how can a wife commit fornication? Fornication is a sexual act between two people who are not married. If that happens in a marriage, it's adultery. And so they wanted to know from Yeshua, Is it all right to divorce your wife for any cause? And they cite Moses in Deuteronomy chapter 24. And many people do that today. Moses has given us this agreement. Moses tells us it's okay. Yeshua said, you have heard it said. But I say, whoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. And so we find ourselves this morning, we having to distinguish or to ask ourselves the question whether divorce is the same as putting away. Is divorcement the same as putting away? Because many people, as I indicated, have ended up inadvertently in a putative relationship or a putative marriage, in the sense that they, in good faith, marry someone and believing that they are married to the person, not realizing that what they have done on earth cannot be validated in heaven. Cannot. Let me explain. Come with me to Matthew chapter 1, and we will look at the relationship between Joseph and Miriam. If we anglicize that, they call her Mary. Let's look at it. The word here says, let's start from verse 18. Now the birth of Yeshua, Amashiach, was on this wise: when, as his mother Miriam was exposed to Joseph before they came together, she was found with child of the Ruach. They were engaged in our vernacular. Betrothed. That's the word of the King James. Miriam and Joseph were engaged, and during that process, Joseph found that she was with child. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man and not willing to make her a public example, was minded to put her away privily. Now understand what's happening here. In times gone past, and I believe it still exists, when a person has given his word to a woman that I want to marry you, he should honor that word. Your word is your bond. And in the Hebrew context here, when certainly in Yeshua's time, when two people decide they're going to get married, it's a binding relationship. And to lose that relationship requires a putting away or a bill of divorcement, even though the marriage here was not yet consummated. I started out by saying there is one law for the homeborn and one for the stranger, one for the children of Israel, one for the church, one for the heathen. It's the same law. It hasn't changed. So don't tell me that was then in biblical time. We are still in biblical times. All the prophecies have not yet been fulfilled. We are still in biblical times. So Miriam and Joseph, Yeshua's earthly father-in-law, were engaged to be married. And he found out that she was expecting a child, and obviously that was a shock to him, and therefore he didn't want to make a spectacle of her, he decided to give her a bill of divorce. Remember, the marriage is not consummated, but she is his wife, says the word. Only at this stage can fornication take place. After marriage, it is adultery. So Yeshua said, only during this time you can put her away. But the churches have come together and say, yeah, you can divorce her. No. That's not what the word says. So they cite Deuteronomy 24. Well, we better go there and see what is it that they're reading from there. Deuteronomy chapter 24, it's a much cited text, and this is exactly where they were citing from. It says, when a man hath taken a wife and married her, and it come to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, because he had found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement and give her in her hand and send her out of the house. And when she is departed out of the house, she may go and be another man's wife. And if the latter husband hate her and write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand and sendeth her out of the house, or if the latter husband die, which took her to be his wife, her former husband, which sent her away, may not take her again to be his wife after she is defiled. For that is abomination before Yah, and thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which Yah thy Elohim giveth thee for an inheritance. And so they brought this to Yeshua and said, Moses says this is okay. Yeshua says, Moses gave you this. Moses gave you permission for this. But he did not replace the law that I established in Genesis 2:24. A man must leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and the two should become one flesh. How do you become unfleshed from your wife? What I put together, says Yeshua, let no man put asunder. Let no man separate. But the churches today are doing that in droves. And so my question also, as a corollary to that thought, is this. Had there not been a golden calf incident, would we have had Deuteronomy written in the way that it has been written today? And I tell you why I asked that question. Come with me to Deuteronomy 31 in verse 26. It says, take this book of the law. And we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, that there is a distinction between the book of the law and the book of the covenant. Deuteronomy is called the second law. After the golden calf incident at Mount Sinai, which was based on the Melchizedek order of things, where everybody becomes a priest, Yah, through Moses, gave them the Deuteronomy, which means they would have one priest through the family of Aaron. Now, listen to what verse 26 is saying. Take this book of the law, take the book of Deuteronomy, and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of Yahweh your Elohim, that it may be there for a witness against you. So the book of Deuteronomy was put in the side, in the chest of the ark, to be a witness against that which they broke inside the Ten Commandments. And so my question is quite relevant. Would we have had Deuteronomy written in the way that it has had there not been a golden calf incident when the people sinned? And so they said to Yeshua, Moses gave us it. He said, no, only because of the hardness of your heart. If you were faithful people, this would not have happened. And so many people today are working on that principle that you can just dispose of your wife or your husband as if it's okay. And the church validates that. And invariably, people are going through 4 or 5 wives or husbands, and the church gives them authority to do that. My question is, how can a woman who has been married 5 times not have a husband? How? Because the woman responded, I have no husband. She well knew that she has been married 5 times, and the person, the man with whom, I said man, because he only made male and female, and it's only male and female that can get married and be blessed in Yah's sight. The society needs to know that. The woman said, I have no husband. And we must not assume that all her husbands had died. That wasn't the case here. We don't see that leaping out of the text. So why did she answer like that? She knew that Yah is concerned mostly with the wife of your youth. The wife of your youth. You better come with me to the book of Malachi. Malachi, chapter 2. And I believe the same way Yah is speaking here in his word to the priests, he's speaking to the pastors and the priests and the bishops and the elders today. And now, O ye priests, this commandment is for you. For whom? For the priest. If you will not hear, and if you will not lay it to your heart to give glory unto my name, saith Yah of hosts, I will even send a curse upon you, and I will curse your blessing. Yea, I have cursed them already, because ye do not lay it to heart. Behold, I will corrupt your seed. I will corrupt your children. They will inherit your corruption. And spread dung up on your faces, even the dung of your solemn feast, and one shall take you away with it. And ye shall know I have sent this commandment unto you, that my covenant might be with Levi, saith Yah of hosts. My covenant was with him in life and peace, and I gave them to him for the fear wherewith he feared me and was afraid before my name. So he's speaking here to the pastors. The pastors today are the ones marrying people 4, 5, 6 times and giving them a blessing. Come with me, therefore, to the same passage, and we will read 10. Have ye not all one Father? Hath not one Yah created us? Why do we deal treacherously every man against his brother by profaning the covenant of our fathers? Why are we doing that? Judah hath dealt treacherously, and abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem, for Judah hath profaned the holiness of Yah, which he loved, and hath married the daughter of a strange God. Yah will cut off the man that doth this, the master and the scholar, out of the tabernacle of Jacob, and him that offereth and offering unto Yah of hosts. Verse 13, and this have ye done again, covering the altar of Yah with tears, with weeping, and with crying out, insomuch that he regarded not the offering anymore. I don't have any desire for your offering because you're not hearing me. You're not obeying what I say. Verse 14, yet he say, wherefore, because Yah hath been a witness between thee and the wife of thy youth. Here it is. Your first wife, verse 14 said, Yah had been a witness between you and the wife of your youth, against whom you have dealt treacherously, yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. Did you get that? Your first wife, the wife you chose, was the wife of your youth. And Yah says, I was there. I blessed you. Verse 15, and did not he make one? He made them one. Yet had he the residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one, that he might seek a what? A righteous seed. Your offspring would be righteous. Therefore, take heed to your spirit, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. Don't put her away. Don't divorce her, because I was there. That's the word of Yah. But that's not what the churches are teaching today. And so they go back to Matthew and say, this exception clause. No, that's for people who are in courtship. That's not for married people. Well, let's go to the book of Romans. Romans chapter 7. Romans chapter 7. Know ye not, brethren, this is Shaul speaking. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law. I'm speaking to you who know the Torah. You know the instructions. How that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth. Man is made under law, not above law. A man is under the law. Let's live it. You know, it is interesting, as we studied in Sabbath school this morning, the teacher raised the point, and I think a good point, in relation to those who will always come to you and say, we don't have to do that because we're covered by grace. Because grace is taking care of everything. But when we read in Titus 2 in verse 11 and 12, we're made to understand that grace teaches that we should move away from wickedness, move away from abomination. It teaches us to be righteous. That's what grace does. Grace is not a license to sin. We need to understand that. There are those who teach and think that as long as I'm covered by grace, I'm all right. I can live anyhow. No. Every man has a measure of grace. So if every man has a measure of grace, logic would seem to indicate that every man would be saved. So the question is, will every man be saved? No. Why? All the children of Israel that left Egypt, they were covered by grace. And they were taken through the wilderness, and for 40 years, Yah showed them the condition of their hearts, and only two from the original group, Caleb and Joshua, made it through. So it requires obedience from us. Grace, you must respond to grace. We need to understand that. So Shaul here is saying, verse 2, chapter 7 of Romans, for the woman which hath an husband, there's no ambiguity here, whether patent or latent. The woman who has a husband is bound by the law to her husband, so long as he liveth. But if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband. So then, if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulterer. Is that clear? What is it that the priests and the bishops and the pastors are not seeing? And they give you the impression that because they belong to another denomination, then this is not practice. There's one law for the homeborn and for the sojourner. So then, if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from the law, so that she is no adulteress, though she be married to another man. It's clear. And so, what we're dealing here is that this woman at the well knew that she'd been married several times. And she knew the law. She knew the law. But like so many people, she was thinking, well, I'm a Samaritan. I'm different from the Jews, and therefore I don't have to do what the Jews are doing. That's why she said, so you men say, you people say that we ought to worship in Jerusalem, but we worship on Mount Gerizim. Yeshua said, you don't know what you're saying. You don't know what you're saying. Salvation came to the Jews first. I came to Yehudi first. I came. And woman, if you understood your history, you would have understood that when the children of Israel were taken away by the Assyrians, they brought people in from Babylon and other places and placed them in Samaria. You are a descendant of them. When lions were eating you, so says the book of Kings, chapter 17. But, woman, the day is coming and the time is now when the true worshipers and those who are truly married to the Messiah, when they worship him, they will do so in spirit and in truth. And therefore, if they speak not according to the word, there is no truth in them. Isaiah 8 and verse 20. No truth at all. So my point earlier is this. There are many people today in churches who are in putative relationships. They have a putative husband or a putative wife. And in good faith, they marry them, believing that it's okay. But if this woman who has been married 5 times did not have a husband, my question to you who has been married 3 or 4 times, whose husband do you have on your hand? And how does heaven record this marriage? Because we just read in Malachi 2, Yeshua says that the wife of your youth, the first one, is the wedding at which he was present and he blessed. So is it possible? It's a question worth asking. That in your 3rd or your 4th marriage, that the pastor, the elder, the priest, the bishop unwisely married you, you are walking and living with someone else's husband or wife because their first wife is still alive or their first husband is still alive. How will this factor in to your salvation at the end of the day? How? How? And so it is worth us looking at the book of Hosea again. It's hardly possible to do marriage without looking at the book of Hosea. We know it well. The word says in chapter 1, the word of Yahweh had come unto Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the sons of Joash, kings of Israel. The beginning of the word of Yahweh of Hosea, and Yahweh said to Hosea, Go, take thee a wife of whoredom, and children of whoredom, for the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from Yahweh. Go, take a prostitute for your wife. Our subject is, go, call your husband. This is strange. Hosea would have read the memoirs of Samson, and he would have known that he ought not to have gone that way. But who is speaking here? Hosea, go and marry a prostitute. But Hosea, go and marry a prostitute. Strange. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son, and Yahweh said to him, call his name Jezreel. Did you hear me? He did not call him any other thing. Call his name Yeshua, not Jesus. For yet in a little while I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. Hosea, this is what I want you to do. The relationship I have with Israel has gone sour. They have left me. They are prostituting themselves with other and I want your experience with your wife to be a demonstration, an exhibit for the whole nation to see that this is the kind of relationship that I have with Israel. I want you to demonstrate that in your relationship. So go and marry a prostitute. And the word said he did. And the first child was named Jezreel. They have another one called Lahumama. Jezreel means Yah's blessingness. Like any good marriage, in the first instance, it starts out on a good footing. And Lahurama means mercy has left the home. They're fighting now. She's not cooking, and she's hardly washing. He doesn't give her any money, and things have gotten bad. Loruama, that's the second child. And we're made to understand as we perambulate through the passage that she leaves the home. She leaves the home. And she went back to her pimps in Jerusalem, her whole lovers. There is no court, Sanhedrin or otherwise, who would not have given this priest, Hosea, a divorce. It's clear. It was obvious. People were looking and seeing that this priest is struggling. His wife is preaching on a Sabbath, and his wife is out there with lovers. He deserves a divorce. And he files for one. He files for a divorce. He goes to Yah. Look at what she's doing. She's an insult to my ministry. It was you, Yah, who told me to go and marry an adulterous woman. I knew from your word that I ought not to do that because the priest should not do that. But she's now left home and she's gone back to her old lovers. I want a divorce. Come with me to chapter 3 of Hosea. Then said Yah unto me, Go yet, love a woman loved of her friend, yet an adulteress according to the love of Yah towards the children of Israel, who look to other Elohim and love fragrance of wine. Listen to Hosea, verse 2, chapter 3. So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for a homer of barley, and half of homer of barley. And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide for me many days, thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man, so I will be for thee. Why is Hosea, having married this woman, now buying his own wife back, when surely, according to the belief, according to the word, he is deserving of divorce? Because Yah doesn't believe in divorce. He says, I hate putting away. A man should leave his mother and his father and cleave to his wife, and no force, no element, no one can separate them. And so this is demonstrated in the relationship between Gomer and Hosea, who had to buy his adulterous wife back and stay intact. Yet, today, the churches are teaching differently. Let me explain something. Because marriage, you ought to understand, is a blood covenant. A blood covenant. Well, what do you mean by that? You see, the Creator, the sovereign Yah, wisely placed a membrane laden with blood vessels in the entrance of the woman's genital, at the opening. Like a veiled gateway, this membrane covers the entrance to the genital passage called the hymen. Therefore, no man may know a woman, even as Adam knew Eve, which has maiden credentials, she's a virgin, without breaking this tenuous tissue, the membrane. At that very moment, when the hymen breaks, a blood covenant is made between the man and the woman as the hymen releases the blood inside. And so you make a blood covenant, and that's why the woman should save herself for her husband. That's a blood covenant. In Hebrews 9:22, we are told, well, there's no remission of sin except for blood. And I say this to say that many today, in the society in which we live, are jumping from bed to bed, from house to house. And by the time they decide to get married, some in their late 30s, 40s, and so on, they've already made a blood covenant with someone who they did not marry. And so, because the blood covenant is there, they bring certain aspect of that relationship into this new marriage, and it contributes towards the subsequent divorce. Because the man they made a covenant with is not the one that they married, because the hymen had long since been broken. Go call your husband. You didn't marry your husband. That's one of the points I want to make. You have a putative relationship. Oh, yes, that's what you have. And because it's a putative relationship, it's almost inevitable that it will lead to a punitive relationship. You will cause hurt to each other. Therein, purity is the imperative burden that accompanies the message in which John the Baptist so valiantly taught. For Johanan said unto Herod, it is not lawful to have your brother's wife. So my question is, when a pastor, a bishop, a priest, an elder is in a particular church, whichever denomination, it matters not. Whenever he knows that this man had been married 2 or 3 times, and he then convenes the church to marry this man who has been married 4 or 5 times, can you not understand what he's doing? He's linking that man with another person's husband or wife who is still alive. Shaul in Romans 7 said, no, this woman, this man is bound by the law to her husband, and only the sleep of death can separate them. We've got to understand that. And so we need to understand that the woman is a sanctuary. It's like unto a sanctuary. Because in Jeremiah 6:2, he said, I've likened the daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. And so if the woman is a sanctuary, only the priest of that sanctuary, only her husband can enter into that pulpit. But that's not how it is in the society. You have lawyers, some of which are liars, telling you, oh, you can have a quick divorce. And the church validates it, and Yahweh said, no. Moses permitted it because it was prevalent in Israel, and it was only because of the hardness of your heart. And so as we bring this thing to its close, we must conclude that perhaps the treason of this age is the insouciant ways in which the men and women have abandoned divine supervision, dashing the hopes of their posterity and perjuring their souls with the audacity of shameless eloquence. The one stone that the patriarch Lamech threw into the marriage pond is sending a rippling effect, because we read in Genesis that Lamech took unto himself 2 wives, the first man to have done that. It was not the intent of Yah that any Lamech should follow afterward. Lamech to take 2 wives, and some have multiplied more wives than Lamech. We have too many Lamechs in the churches today, and in the world. We need some more John the Baptist in the pulpits. May it be that as we look at these thoughts and take them to heart, we will understand that the indiscriminate practice of lustful habits invites nature to protest against the abuses, leaving the body susceptible to diseases. We need to understand that. So, because of the prideful hearts, some have become redoubtable enemies of truth. Moreover, Yeshua said, because of the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go and making a tingling with their feet. Isaiah 3:16-24. Because of that, they are prideful. They continue to live in punitive marriages and putative marriages, but not marriages that are holy and righteous. May we return to the original intent of Yah, that it is a honorable estate. That's what marriage is. And one of the pillars of creation that holds up the society. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.